One of my favorite things about being a home brewer is being able to look at something and go, I can make beer with that. And that's exactly how this cinnamon roll porter came to be. What's up everybody, Just Brewing here. Welcome back to the home brewery for another grain to glass video. If you're new here, first and foremost, welcome, thanks for stopping by. Here on this channel, I like to do grain to glass videos, blind taste tests, and a little bit of other stuff sprinkled in. If that's the kind of stuff that you like, feel free to subscribe and hit that like button so you can see a little bit more of this content. For those that don't know, I do have a website. You can visit justbrewing.com where I've got my brew schedule published so you can see what and when I'm brewing. You can actually make donations directly to me and the channel, and you can pick up merch just like this, and all merch proceeds will be going to charity forever. If you're not new here, sup. This brew day was a little bit different from some of the others, and I don't want to make this video too long, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And this brew day starts in the kitchen. I'm gonna bake my cinnamon rolls just following the instructions on the package, and they'll be done by the time I'm done milling my grains. For our grain bill, we have Maris Otter, biscuit malt, Crystal 40, chocolate malt, midnight wheat malt. I give that a nice crush, and then I add my final addition of flaked oats. We're gonna be mashing at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm adding in part of my grain bill, and then I'm adding in, very hesitantly, adding in my cinnamon rolls. I did dice them up just so I can get a little bit more surface area coverage, but I add them in parts, add more of the grains in, I stir it up, add more cinnamon rolls, I stir it up. I keep doing that until I'm out of both cinnamon rolls and grain. Now this is about 2 packages of cinnamon rolls, so we've got quite a bit in here. I did Vorloff some wort off, and I'm now putting it back in the top. Really, I just took some out of the spigot, I opened it up, added some into the bucket, and I'm putting it back on top just to make sure that there's nice coverage on all of it. And here is an unnecessary slow-mo of how nasty brew day can be sometimes. With Ravioli's emotional help, I do lift my grains and get this up to a boil and add my first charge of 1.75 ounces of East Kent Golding. I add my final charge at about 5 minutes in. It's 1 ounce of East Kent Golding. And then I chill it down as fast as I can, get it into a sanitized fermenter, and then I add my yeast. We're going with White Labs British Ale yeast. I do save some because I got a little bit of a yeast storage here, so that's really nice to have. I close it up, seal it off, and we are good to go for fermentation. About 7 days into fermentation, when airlock activity had stopped, with the help of my lovely wife, we add some cinnamon, vanilla bean, and the vanilla itself. We add it into the fermenter. I stir it in, making sure not to splash it, and we seal it back up for about 2 to 3 days, and here is the final result. And here it is in a glass, the cinnamon roll porter served on Nitro. Now this beer turned out absolutely fantastic. It looks great. It's textbook color for a porter. It is nice and solid brown with a nice toffee colored head on it. With the Nitro, it gives it quite a nice pillowy mouthfeel and does add to some of the bready texture that you get. And on the nose, I mean, everything that you need comes through. You get a touch of the cinnamon. Some of the vanilla does come through, but shortly after the cinnamon has its chance to kind of take over. For this beer, I did opt into, obviously, real cinnamon rolls and vanilla and cinnamon. I did add all these things opposed to purees and extracts. In my experience, some of those, at least on the cinnamon and spiced side, they haven't worked out in my favor where it tastes actually, you can taste how fake it is. So I did decide to go real cinnamon and everything like that just to kind of give a more natural taste. And I think it really, really comes through. One mistake that I did make was the amount of cinnamon that I added for this, what it turned out to be like a 4-gallon, 3.5-gallon batch. Adding 1.5 pounds of cinnamon rolls took up quite a bit of my volume. That was not something that I planned for, and that's kind of why we're able to make these mistakes as homebrewers. So what? On a mass scale, this would be a big, big problem. But here, what is a gallon and a half missing? Like I'm not mad at that, but I did not dial back how much cinnamon I decided to add. I had my cinnamon sticks, and I knew I was going to add all of them for a 5-gallon batch. And when it came down to it and I was, getting it into the fermenter, this obviously was not 5 gallons. So I ended up having to adjust a few things, but didn't adjust the cinnamon. So that was one mistake. And in order to get over that, that was where Nitro came in. Nitro was kind of a last minute decision, but once I actually got it in a glass and it was mostly carbonated after maybe a day and a half, 2 days on CO2, I tasted it, and that cinnamon, that strong cinnamon flavor and smell was very much still there. And then I had the last minute thought, oh, I actually have a Nitro tank. I can serve this on Nitro. So let's talk about serving it on Nitro for a sec. It's not full nitrogen, it's 70% nitrogen and 30% CO2. And the beer was already partially carbonated with CO2 when it first saw the nitrogen mix anyway. Really, what it comes down to is that was mostly a time-saving thing. It was an on-the-fly decision. You can carbonate a beer with the beer gas mix, but you can usually speed things up if you partially carbonate it with CO2 and then introduce the nitrogen. That was just kind of how it worked out for me, considering it was kind of a last-minute decision. I just wanted to taste it and see where it was at least carbonated. And that was the decision that I decided to make was, you know what, I'll just finish carbonating it on nitrogen, and everything turned out great. Now that quick problem solving, I'm just fortunate enough to have a nitrogen tank here with beer gas mix in it already. That was just kind of a lucky thing. If you don't have that and you're not able to dispense this on nitrogen, do consider how much volume you're gonna lose from the cinnamon rolls, and make sure to adjust everything, all your extra flavoring after that, so that you're not doing what I did. This would have been still fantastic on CO2, but personally, I thought the cinnamon was a bit too much, and that the vanilla came in too late. And that last second idea of putting it on nitrogen solved all those problems. Some of the other things that you need to know about doing this if you decide to, when it comes down to it, you may not need to use real cinnamon rolls. That was kind of a bit of a stretch, and it did taste like a cinnamon roll when I was getting my first few wort samples from the mash and things like that. It did taste quite a bit like a cinnamon roll. But once I added the yeast and the hops and everything like that, the natural flavor kind of got covered up, and it may still come out with cinnamon and vanilla, or maybe even just doing a little bit in secondary. I think that might not be a bad idea, but 2 full packages is not sustainable, especially if this were a commercial thing. This would not be sustainable at all. If you decide to do this, you may be able to get away with it without using real cinnamon rolls, or at least adding some, maybe a smaller amount, back in secondary instead of during the mash. All that being said, I do look forward to being able to do this again, maybe trying it without the cinnamon rolls or doing it on only CO2. I definitely want to do this again and make a few changes to see if I can make it even better. Let me know if that's something that you may consider. Tell me in the comments. Until then, thanks for viewing Just Brewing.